there's Brandie. Hey,
Hi.
glad to have you. Glad to
I'm
have
glad to
you.
be here. Can't quite
Actually,
hear
you
very
were
well.
out with, can you hear me? I know my audio is
Yeah.
bad. Um,
Yeah, it's a
so I'm
little bit. I
sorry
can turn it
about
up.
that.
There you
So you were out there with us in front of the mayor's office too. And so, all of us remember 2016 as we had to occupy City Hall.
Yeah.
And you were out there, but you're also one who, as we were out there, even then, we're talking about public health. What do we do if we get
Right.
tear gas? What are some things that
Right.
we all need to know as we're out here engaging in protest work? And now you've been one of the most outspoken people that I know on this question of Black health and of Black people making sure that we keep ourselves safe. So can you talk quickly about what the coronavirus is and what you think about reopening the country?
Sure. So my expertise is in the very small things like biochemistry and how they work. So this virus is basically a coronavirus, can be anything from a common cold to something like SARS. And there's another one called MERS. Well, the difference between the common cold and SARS and MERS is that the common cold is a human virus, whereas SARS, MERS, and now COVID-19 are other animal viruses coming from different animals that are mostly mammals. So therefore, it's easy for their viruses to cross over to us, especially when you look at the overdevelopment of the planet and people moving into new regions, capitalism, obviously travel, expanding economies. So people will, think that's exactly how HIV also came to be. So it's a virus that is easy to kill, luckily. It's not like hepatitis where you need 10% bleach, although that wouldn't hurt. But it's actually soap and water soluble. That's why the big soap and water on your hands and all that is so popular, because it's a very simple way to kill the virus. And I'd say this basically an alcohol solution, but not isopropanol. Drinking alcohol actually is more potent, and you can dilute it a little further. So you can literally put a sprayer on a bottle of 151 and spray down things you're coming in contact with, like your door handles, maybe inside your car. And that'll kill the virus because it's like soap and water soluble. It's not the worst case scenario, but now we're in the worst case scenario because the Americans lacking a lockdown have kind of let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube at some point. I have put the toothpaste back in the tube up to about that far, but it's just the same with diseases. If
Right.
you let them get out of control, as America has. And it's funny because we were actually, my partner and I went on lockdown very early, and we were supposed to go see Bernie with you. And totally, I was like, we don't need to be in crowds right now. Like, I had been kind of watching what's going on in China and understanding our economy is based on practically a slave economy in China, and how that works and how much travel goes on. Seeing this very early on in January, February, where people are dropping to the ground in China and in Taiwan, and looking at the world news, it gave me an early heads up. So I was just like, I'm not, so good on that. But also I'm seeing in our community, because I do live in a Black community, a lot of bad mask wearing. So a lot of people are handling masks without, this is how you're supposed to handle a mask. You notice I don't touch the filter at all. And you just put it on and take it off that way. And I guess because I've been in health and research so long, like, I don't even realize there was another way to hold a mask. And also
Right.
people are wearing it. I don't know if this is like a sagging thing, but they're wearing it on their chin. And that's not going
With
to
their
help
noses
much.
out. Yes. Yes.
With the nose is
There was
poking out.
one
And
on
it's like,
Twitter. Yeah. There was
and there's
one
like
on
a
Twitter
little,
with this woman with in it because she said she couldn't breathe the other way. So what's the point of the mask?
Yeah. So
Right.
you can breathe. It's just your mind is telling you can't breathe. This is a paper mask I have. And there's a metal thing in here, and that's to go actually over the bridge of your nose. It's really supposed to come close to your eyes because your eyes also have mucus glands and viruses can get in that way. I happen to wear glasses most of the time when I'm outside of the house, so I don't have that issue. But I see a lot of the sagging masks, and I want to be like, no, because when you sag the mask, think about it, the mask is there to catch things, you know? And so even if you get off work and you take it and you put it down here, and you're now inhaling if there's virus here, you're going to inhale it. And what I need to remind people, a lot of I'm noticing in my own neighborhood, is that it's a respiratory disease. Respiratory disease, meaning it can fly around and you can inhale it more than you're going to like eat it and get sick from it. So, you know, when you take out the trash, you need to wear a mask. If, you know, you're like, you know, people slam down the little bins and stuff, and I see a waft of like garbage can air, and I'm like, I hope no
And you
one's
don't
sick
know
in your
what's in that.
building.
Right.
Right. Or
Right.
trash, or even clippings from the lawn. Maybe someone spit in the lawn, and hopefully it's like dying, obviously, over a few hours. Or becoming not viable. It's not, viruses aren't really living things, but I will not go into how that weird
Can you,
biochemistry.
someone dropped in the comments, want to speak to this because, you know, there's always this balance too between accepting government puts out and a healthy paranoia. So for me, and I think you know me well enough to know that I err on the side of, I say I'm a conspiracy realist. There have been so many conspiracies against Black people that when you talk about conspiracies, when you talk about concerted efforts to kill us or at least allow us to die, I believe almost all of them, right? One of the
Absolutely,
comments
under the
that's,
guise of free healthcare.
right, right. One of the comments on this idea that coronavirus preys on certain blood types. So whether or not the blood types that are more common to Black people are more prone to catch coronavirus or, you know, die as a result of coronavirus. Thing about that?
So what that
And we don't
probably
want you to have to
stems
make it
from,
up.
no, I'm not going to make it up. I'm actually mourning a friend's death right now because of a
I'm
blood
sorry.
issue. Yeah, no, this is true. So I talk very adamantly about malaria and sickle cell syndrome, or sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait are actually very prevalent in African American and African and all equatorial communities because malaria is also present. And what it does is make people kind of immune to malaria. And so we carry sometimes those genes. Now, that said, we know COVID-19 affects the cardiovascular system. We see young people having strokes. We see people with hypertension having the worst reactions to the disease. So we can conclude that probably if you have sickle cell allele, what we call sickle cell, genetic trait, or a sickle cell disease, you might suffer worse from COVID-19, but they're still collecting data on like specifically sickle cell, but there's a ton of underlying conditions that our people could, become susceptible from, but sickle cell anemia would be one of them, absolutely. It's the inflammatory response of the body that causes people to basically be in the hospital on ventilators because they can no longer tolerate, their lungs are becoming very inflamed. And it's odd because then they're like, oh, well, anti-inflammatories may not help very much. And it may be because the immune system needs to react in that way.
Right.
But
and one of the things we talked about last time was also these underlying conditions that actually result from racism, underlying conditions of diabetes, of asthma, of
Mm-hmm.
hypertension. We have to be careful not to blame Black people for our own oppression, right? Diabetes
Right.
comes because from a lack of access to healthy food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hypertension comes from the stress, often the stress of being Black, right? When we talk about asthma,
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about environmental racism. And so these are
Absolutely.
conditions that we face that are not the fault of our own, but we do have to protect ourselves. So recognize that
Yeah.
the underlying issues are there. We didn't create those underlying issues, but we fully to push back against them.
Yeah, absolutely. The colonialism, in a lot of ways, the bio-oppression of people, we'll just say, was through food. So you'll notice that on the reservations, we're losing a lot of people. And this is because the lard and starch diets that were given to people. If you're on the reservation, it was through rations. If you're in the Black community, it was through the scraps of the slave owners, and making a diet of that food. And now it's become, it's part of our culture. And we're like, oh, when Big Mama makes those greens, like with that ham hock in it, it's like the only time I eat pork. But we also have to not blame ourselves and look at colonialism as the cause for a lot of the conditions and things we share with Indigenous people, like diet. And that's even more reason I'm like adamant about masks. I know that not everyone can wear masks. Some people say they can't breathe and stuff. But it is like an exponential increase in safety if both parties are wearing masks. So if only one
Right.
person's wearing masks, it increases infection rate like exponentially. Just one person not wearing a mask. So it's interesting because when I go out with my mask, it seems like people think they don't have to wear a mask. And I'm like walking away because it's actually social distancing and a mask is what the LA County, at least, public health departments requesting. Our mayor wants to act like it's one or
Right.
the
Right. Dr. Brand.
other. So it's still this mindset.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Brandie Cross, we're
Yeah.
gonna thank you for your time and transition you off screen,
Absolutely.
but ask if you hang out in the comments. So if you have folks have
Sure.
science or science questions in the comments, and Brandie can respond there. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Good to
And
see
we are
you.
bye.